Welcome to another Manx Radio podcast, a MiTunes podcast, in fact, here at manxradio.com.
Marc Tyley, the nation's station, Manx Radio.
My guest on MiTunes this week is so well known across the musical world of the Isle of Man, you will almost certainly have seen him play somewhere, something, somehow. He is Ken Mitchell. Welcome to MiTunes.
Good morning, Mark.
Good to have you here. Now, I wasn't aware fully of how much teaching you used to do until my last week's guest, Jack Diver, said you helped him along with his trumpet.
I did. I taught him for 7 or 8 years, probably.
And very much involved with the brass band.
Yes, he was in Douglas Band, which I was conducting for 25 odd years.
Superb.
Yeah.
Where do we start with you? What was the first instrument you ever picked up?
Voice.
Okay.
Sang in the Guild, and then I did a couple of roles in the theatre with Choral Union. I played Lewis Leon Owens in Anna and the King, King of Siam, King and I, which was the first big role because Dad was a singer. Dad Jim was a big singer on the Isle of Man. He dragged me into that. But then I wanted to play in brass bands. For some bizarre reason, it hooked me in. And I started playing trombone with Onken Band when I was about 11.
If we may, just to set the record straight, list the instruments that you feel happy playing.
Most of the brass band family.
Right.
Which goes from cornet through horns, euphoniums, trombones. I even played tuba on the March for Remembrance Sunday a couple of times, but wouldn't repeat it.
Okay.
Then string family, guitar, mandolin, banjo, ukulele, bass guitar, etc. Saxophone, clarinet, but I wouldn't go out and do it professionally, but I can play them.
Okay.
But anything really.
Keyboard?
Keyboard,
Yes,
yeah.
let's say piano.
Yeah, I learned piano from probably from about 7 or 8 and did it up to grade 5 and then moved on. I was sick of getting my knuckles wrapped in those days. Piano is great grounding for everything.
And you've got a very musical family.
Yes. Well, I mean, I did a music degree when I was in my 40s, which was going away and studying weekends for a couple of years. But I thought then that what an opportunity for my 3 boys, if they want to go that route, because they were all playing at that stage various instruments, all multi-instrumentalists as well. But they did, and Rob was the first to go. He went to Huddersfield and studied with Philip McCann, the great cornet trumpetist at Huddersfield, and came out with his degree, but came back home. He's a bit of a home bird, is Rob. Came back home and settled down, had a family, and he's actually stepped into Douglas Town Band role as conductor, musical director from me, and he's busy with that, and also with Fundamentals Function Band, which I play in as well. Plays bass guitar in that. Then you've got Dan, the middle son, brilliant, absolutely brilliant trombone player. He's played around the world with Agbeko, who were over here for one of Dave McLean's festivals at the Peel Centenary Centre, but he was off around the world, played in Croatia with them, and with the Mike James Last Orchestra, he did a tour of Russia, which was quite impressive.
Yeah.
And then Pete, the youngest, who was very, very busy, percussionist, drummer, just over at the moment, finishing a tour with Ideal Forgery, and I got up and guested with him a couple of times with that as well. But he's been on the James tour playing percussion with them for the last year, really, including playing at the Parthenon in Greece.
Goodness me, what a venue.
Yeah.
What a venue.
Yeah.
And what a joy for you as a dad to have 3 boys all following in your footsteps and doing brilliantly at their own chosen instruments.
Yes, I know, it's amazing. And the mum's got a hand in it as well, because she's a musician too, so yeah.
Well, it's a joy. Let's have your first choice, and we're going to go into the gaiety, really, for this, and take you back into the pit for this one. Some musicals. Which musical are we going to focus on?
Well, probably my favourite all-time musical to both watch and to play in is West Side Story by Bernstein and Sondheim. Wonderful music, wonderful story, and so many great portrayals of the characters over the years.
We can only have one piece from it, but what'll it be?
Well, the overture has a smattering of everything, so that's the one to go for me.
Great choice. My guest this week on MiTunes is the musician Ken Mitchell, who, if you were listening yesterday, and don't worry, you can catch it all again on the podcast come Thursday afternoon, plays an awful lot of instruments, but you also used to sell them.
Well, Peter Norris Music latterly, and then before that, my own named store, and previous to that, family business was the Music Box,
Yeah.
which started in 1968. So I had 50 years, taken almost 50 years
Of
within retail, which was challenging, but so much fun.
So many people come to you for advice on their first instrument or whether they're upgrading or whatever. You must have seen virtually all the musicians through the Isle of Man in the past 50 years.
Yeah.
Coming through your doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of, guitars especially that we've sold over the years. I mean, there's thousands of instruments out there somewhere.
Yeah. all come through you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's no longer happening.
No.
And as far as I know, we've got a small music shop. Bless him, Dave Rolls.
In Peel. Good luck to him, yeah.
But in Douglas, nothing at the moment.
No. Although the record shop is doing accessories, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So,
What changed? Because obviously it was flourishing, and then it didn't. What changed?
The internet.
Really?
Well, the internet combined with the world banking crash, I think, has had a knock-on effect to all small businesses on the Isle of Man. And if you look at retail, it's struggling all over the world, really, but certainly UK and the island-wide as well. You look at the empty shops in Strand Street, which have been empty for years.
So it wasn't just the music side of things, it's retail generally.
Retail generally, yeah. Certain things in retail don't get affected by the internet as such, like fruit and veg. You can buy from Tesco's online, but really you go and look at it and pick it up. Whereas instruments, you'd be there for advice and help. The internet suddenly became the advisor for everyone, and you just look at it, listen to it, like the colour and press a button. And they can get it here within 2 days, whereas my suppliers couldn't get it to me within a week or 10 days.
Very different. Very different.
Very different.
Who set up that first shop? Was it your dad?
It was my dad.
Yeah.
And he came out of the police force and had enough of that, late nights, what have you. Had me as a child, baby, waking him up all the time. And he started a fruit and veg business. It was close to the hospital, busy shop, but he was a musician, singer, and he was getting requests for things and decided to open up a back room in that shop in Circular Road, which is now Eagle Court, Barclays. That was our house and shop. He set up that in there, and I remember one of the first instruments he sold was a sitar.
Goodness.
Not a guitar, a sitar, which was the weirdest thing at that time for a young lad to see.
Made famous by the Beatles and
exactly,
and the Stones
Ravi
as
Shankar,
well.
etc. Yeah. So that was the first thing, and then he decided to open up a specific music shop and record shop at that time, because record shops had sort of failed on the island. I think Boots was the last successful one before he went into the venture. And from there I was involved as a teenager and right the way through. And we moved into Strand Street, which I think was 71 or 72, and developed that store, which is now, or was, the old game store in Strand Street. Yep, that was ours. And so we redid all the modifications on that building works at the time. And it was a great shop. Great shop, opened by the late, great Ronnie Aldrich, who lived on the island at the time, was a friend of Mum and Dad, and off we went. Sadly, in 82, 83, my mum died. My dad was completely disheartened with everything, and we went into a partnership with Rushworths of Liverpool, Rushworths Music House, and the business then became Rushworth Mitchell Music, and I was like an executive director stroke manager from 83 to the mid-90s.
Let us look at your second choice of music. Fabulous guitarist.
Yes, Pete Huttlinger. Pete was one of the guitarists, or the main guitarist with John Denver for many years. He played banjo, mandolin, and various other instruments. I think he even played violin with John Denver, but he was well known for his absolutely astounding finger-picking skills. Sadly, Peter's no longer with us because all through the time he was working with John Denver, he had an inherent heart condition and had to have a pump fitted into his large ventricle to keep his heart going. So he never had a pulse, apparently, in his latter life. But he sadly passed away a few years ago, 3 years or 4 years ago. But absolutely amazing finger-picking guitarist, introduced to me by Gareth Pearson, who we brought over to the young lad at the time, another great finger-picker, but he introduced me to Pete, and wow.
And the piece we're going to have is a Stevie Wonder piece.
It's a Stevie Wonder piece, but obviously Stevie Wonder played it and wrote it with a band environment. Stevie playing keyboards, which is 88 notes and 2 hands, playing every note, whereas Pete Huttlinger did an arrangement of it, playing it just him and 4 fingers and a thumb, and his right-handed finger-picking skills. It is amazing, featuring every line of Stevie's song, bass right the way up through to the brass section.
Here it is, Superstition. My guest on MiTunes this week plays, well, an awful lot of instruments, more than Don Partridge, if you remember him, who was a one-man band, Rosie Oh Rosie. Anyway, we won't dwell on that. We talked a bit about brass, and we talked a bit about being in the Gaiety, and we touched on acoustic guitar, but there's a rocker inside the beating heart of Ken Mitchell. He can get down and rock it just like anybody else. Better than most. You do still like a bit of rocking, don't you,
Well,
Ken?
I do, and this weekend I've been playing with my son's band Ideal Forgery, who were over visiting from Manchester, and they always get me up to shred some Hendrix and things in that, so much so that my finger is rather injured.
He's wearing a plaster, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, where he's injured himself going mad on that fretboard. But, you know, there have been so many rock acts. And, you know, there used to be almost, it was a battle between guitarists. When I think back to the 70s and the Deep Purples and the Black Sabbath and then this lot and then that lot, they were always trying to outdo each other.
Absolutely. And so many great ones and so many great bands. Where'd you pick a favourite from? So I pick a tune rather than the band or the guitarist in this case, because I thought the whole structure was amazing. And when you think three musicians played this, one playing keyboards with a bass pedal board at times, or bass guitar, and just amazing the sound they got for three.
We'll hold on to that thought for the moment before we reveal Wednesday's track, who it's going to be and what it's going to be. And it's a great choice, by the way, dear listener. Do not go away. But going back to those legendary guitarists, the Ritchie Blackmores, Hendrix, and all that crowd coming up 60s and 70s, am I right thinking they were pretty much rooted in the blues?
Yes, and I think primarily I call myself a blues guitarist rather than a rock guitarist or a jazz guitarist or anything like that, because I love that style and I fall into that style quite happily. Robert Cray, one of my favourites of the modern bluesmen, but going back through John Lee Hooker and everybody in the distant past, back to Blind Blake, who I love playing on acoustic.
And when you're playing your electric guitar, what is your instrument of choice, or does it depend who you're playing with?
It does. To an extent, it depends, because obviously there's so many different styles of instruments suitable for various different genres of music. If I'm doing country, it'll be a Telecaster. If I'm doing blues, you can still use the Telecaster, but the Strat is probably my favourite. But for something more classic rocky, that has to be a Gibson.
Yeah, with that fatter sound.
Fatter sound.
Fuller sound.
Yeah.
Well, you hinted at who was going to be performing for us on day 3. Tell us more about your love of Rush.
Rush, what a band. Virtuosic completely. The whole band from bass player to drummer, Neil Peart. Amazing drummer. I watched the video of them playing at Copacabana Beach, where there's a big screen behind Neil Peart, and halfway through a particular number, the big screen changes to a big band, and the kit swings round, and he plays a big band number for half the song. Just incredible. And Alex, the guitarist, amazing guitarist with fantastic licks and ability, and the song, my favourite of theirs. I know there are lots of others, but Spirit of Radio.
Everything gives me a taste almost. Of the prophets were written on the studio wall. Concert hall. Echoes with the sound of salesmen. Of salesmen. Of salesmen.
Ken Mitchell is my guest this week, but because he plays so many instruments and has so much to talk about, the podcast is going to be full of extra bits. So if you haven't had enough, and you won't have, I can tell, there'll be a full podcast with all the extra bits available around about 12:05 today. But for now, Ken Mitchell, let's talk about teaching, because as I mentioned at the very beginning of the week, my last week's guest, Jack Divers, trumpet player, happened to throw into conversation that you taught him and got him going on the trumpet. You're still teaching.
I am still teaching, and not just the trumpet. I teach all the guitar family of instruments, right through all the brass band and orchestral brass instruments, and also Sibelius software. So if anyone wants to get their hands on working their way around Sibelius software for GCSE study, I've had a few GCSE students in the last couple of years, including Alexandra Slater. So I helped her through her exams there, and others, which I really enjoy. So
Sibelius software, what does that do?
Writes music for. I'm going to say for you, but it doesn't. You have to do it. But
Yeah.
it's getting your head around the operating of the software. So you can do anything from a simple song to a full orchestral or brass band score, etc.
So if you play into it, does it put the dots up for you?
It will do, but you can also do it more accurately by using the computer keyboard with a mouse and the numeric keyboard part as well. You can get everything exactly where you want it to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very clever
Yep.
stuff. Not AI. That's not AI.
No, it's not
No,
AI
that's
at all.
just
No.
completely different.
Big human interface as well.
Fantastic. So human beings working with computers, getting it right. Question. When a youngster comes to you and says, I want you to teach me the electric guitar, what are the tunes that he or she still wants to learn first?
Crazy. Smoke on the Water.
Really?
Absolutely. And it's come from the parents or the grandparents even,
Yeah.
who play these songs to the kids. AC/DC.
I tell you why I asked. The other day I was walking down past my old house in Ballasalla, and the village hall across the road there by the ford, and I'm hearing kids rehearsing their band All Right Now.
All right now, yeah.
Booming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they couldn't have been more than 15.
No.
You know.
No, I know. And again, that's come from the parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, All Right Now, I'm doing a class at UCM, and All Right Now has been requested by the people who are attending the class there. So, fantastic.
And it is funny because when you look at these classic tunes, and anyone who's ever played the guitar, you might have tried to play them, you can get to play them quite quickly, but you might be missing a few important bits of the chord, or you might not. You're thinking, why doesn't it sound like the record?
Absolutely.
And you'll help them get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the resolutions and the inversions that you need to work on.
I remember years ago listening to a band who were doing some Rolling Stones, and the singer was great, and they were doing it. but they hadn't realised that the tuning of the guitar for Keith Richards needs to be quite different from standard.
Yep.
And the chords that he's playing, you really struggle to try and play those chords in normal tuning.
Yeah, you do.
And I just went up to them and said, "That's great, boys. Why don't you try this?" And it was like Saul on the road to Damascus. Next time I saw them, they sounded much more like the Rolling Stones.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the rhythm was there.
Yeah.
And suddenly the tuning was there. Which do you prefer teaching? What's your favourite one to teach?
Guitar, really. I teach more guitarists than I teach anything else, really. I've got a handful of brass pupils currently, and a few odd ones like a banjo and a ukulele and a mandolin and things like that. But guitar is the one, really.
It's interesting. A lot of people say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't have given up my piano lessons as a kid." Nobody ever says, "Oh, I'm really upset that I learnt an instrument." Everybody regrets giving up.
Yes.
If they've given up.
Yeah. These days you get weekend warriors who want to take it up again in their older, like middle age to retirement age, and there's no reason why they can't be good. The UCM class, again referring back to that, it's a mixed age range there from 16 through to 75. And they're all doing really well, and it's classic rock based this time.
What a wonderful course. Well, we're going to take you back to the brass situation, brass band work for the final piece. Talk us through it.
Back in 1994, I got approached by Douglas Town Band to be their MD, which I thought about it long and hard and eventually made the jump from playing to that. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And one of the, so I did 30 years nearly at MD of Douglas, stood down for son Rob now, who's taken over and is doing a great job, by the way. He's got a great musical ear. But one of my favourite pieces ever to play with brass band, and I was lucky enough to conduct YBS and Douglas Band in the Gaiety Theatre playing this piece, which is Candide Overture by Bernstein.
Well, we'll have that now. And as I mentioned at the beginning of today, the full podcast, there's loads more that you haven't heard, dear listener, will be available at 12:05 at manxradio.com/podcast. But for now, Ken Mitchell, thank you for being my MiTunes guest.
Thank you, Mark.
a wonderful brass band piece chosen by Ken Mitchell, who's been my guest all this week on MiTunes. Thanks to Ken and to all my guests. Keep coming back here to manxradio.com because there's new podcasts popping up every single day. I'm Marc Tyley. Join me if you can for the morning show, 9:30 to 12, Monday to Friday at Manx Radio.